And welcome to the second half of the program. Over the years, the Niger Delta has suffered decades of environmental devastation. This due to oil exploration and extraction by international oil companies. And this has resulted in severe environmental damage, contaminating water, soil, and mangrove forests, as well as ruining agriculture and fishing livelihoods. The consequences of this destruction are dire. Toxic pollution has led to increased disease and premature deaths, severely impacting public health. The Bayelsa State Oil and Environmental Commission is demanding urgent action to address this crisis, calling for environmental cleanup, socio-economic recovery, and just transition beyond oil dependency. Joining us now is Dr. Catherine Nwajaku-Daho. She's the Director, Politics and Governance Program, ODIA, a global think tank based in London. And she's also the chair of the expert working group of the Bayelsa State Oil and Environmental Commission. We thank you very much for joining us on the program. It's a crucial conversation, one we've been having over the years, talking about the needed cleanup in the Niger Delta region. But, you know, from through the eyes of the agency you represent, that's the Bayelsa agency concerned, tell us some more about your observations.
So thank you very much for inviting me here today. So the Bayelsa State Oil and Environmental Commission was a commission set up by the government of Bayelsa State in 2019. Mandated by Bayelsan law to investigate the root causes of the pollution crisis in the state and to make recommendations about what needed to be done in terms of regulatory reform, in terms of legislative changes, but also in terms of what we needed to be asking the oil companies to do differently. So we have published a report which outlines exactly what that is, and we're calling on the oil companies, but also other stakeholders, to take cleanup and remediation seriously as a matter of urgent necessity.
Well, you mentioned that the Bayelsa State Oil and Environmental Commission was established in 2019. Is this the first report from that commission, or there have been past reports that have not really yielded any results?
There have been so many reports written about the tragedy in the Niger Delta, but there has not been a specific report written about Bayelsa State as such. We published our report, which was based on over 4 years of research, gathering evidence sessions, asking people to come and bear witness, bear their own testimonies, commissioning new pieces of research, scientific studies, forensic evidence gathering, and so on. And we published a report on our findings last year. So in the House of Lords in the UK, where one of the major oil companies responsible for the damage that we're seeing is domiciled, we published a report and shared our findings. And this week, we have been in Bayelsa State itself, in Yenagoa, and delivered our report to the Bayelsa State Executive Committee, and in so doing, closed this particular chapter by demonstrating that the mandate that was given to us, we have fulfilled. We've also been in Abuja over the last few days, organizing an international conference to bring other people to a level of awareness about what we're recommending in the report.
Right, and we understand that about $12 billion, at least from the report, would be needed for some form of cleanup in Bayelsa State specifically. Help us to understand, and as you have attributed earlier, there have been series of reports over the general level of degradation in that region. But when we talk about Bayelsa State, how much help has Bayelsa gotten, looking at, you know, how you reeled out the effect on residents in the state?
Yeah, Bayelsa State, currently 2.3 million people, accounts for at least 20% of the oil and gas revenues of Nigeria. But, you know, the consequences of the pollution that Bayelsans have had to bear has been borne essentially by them alone. There's been very little systematic cleanup or remediation of the negative effects of oil and gas pollution. And so this report is essentially uncovering that situation and also recommending urgent cleanup and remediation. We have put a figure on it, $12 billion over the next 12 years, we believe, at a minimum, would be required to begin a cleanup. Of course, the oil companies have said and will say that they do cleanup, but we observed with our own eyes and through the commissioned studies that we undertook that cleanup is certainly not up to par. It's not up to par by Nigeria's own regulatory standards, but let alone international standards. So we're asking for something much more robust and thorough and systematic. Because the problem in Bayelsa, as in many parts of the Niger Delta, is that we're not talking about one accident or one pollution incident. We're talking about a systematic negligence where you have very, very old, faulty pipeline infrastructure that's not sufficiently, it's not sufficiently guarded, not sufficiently securitized, and so very exposed to so many problems. And the companies will obviously always claim that the reason why you have so much systemic pollution is because of sabotage. In our work, we have demonstrated that that argument doesn't stand up to scrutiny, that the process of even identifying the causes of the spills is so flawed that conclusion, which is often troped out by the companies, is really not evidenced by what we have seen. So we're calling for major urgent action whereby that 12 billion will be used to set up a recovery agency and invest in serious systematic cleanup to end what our chair, the chair of the Bayelsa State Oil and Environmental Commission, Lord Sentamu, has called environmental genocide.
Well, that's quite a robust broad budget, but talk to us. I'm very concerned about how this cleanup is going to go without having to hold these IOCs accountable for the liabilities in the past. What's the dimension of the cleanup going to take?
We're asking for a serious cleanup effort, and we believe it's not just a question of money, but a question of how that money is going to be spent. So we're also recommending the introduction of an independent agency that will be responsible for ensuring that those funds are spent in transparent, accountable ways. We are also saying that the companies themselves, relative to what they have taken out of Bayelsa in terms of profit, so Bayelsa has contributed over the last 60 years $1 trillion to the central coffers of the Nigerian state, and that's at a very minimum. And so we're asking the companies, relative to what they've actually taken, and the big companies involved are essentially any AGIP, notwithstanding the sell-off of some of its assets in Bayelsa, but also Shell. Shell is the most important target of the recommendations of the Bayelsa State Oil and Environmental Commission. There have been some exercises in cleanup that have begun in Ogoni, for example, and after the 2011 UNEP report, there was a HIPREP set up We know the problems, the many problems over the years that Hype Prep have undergone. We've tried to, take account of those problems, and that's why we're recommending an independent agency. But the kind of clean-up, at least on paper, that is envisaged in the Ogoni case, we would like very much to see that happen in Bayelsa. We did our best as a commission, independently set up and funded by the Bayelsa state government in Bayelsa. But what's really required before we can even envisage the scale of the cleanup required is an independent environmental assessment. We've done our work, but we believe upon this work, some serious, even more serious and systematic environmental assessments need to be done in order to be able to determine how the cleanup will be undertaken. And in the report, we detail what that could look like. There are a number of methods. We quote the SCAT method as something that is very promising, that we would like to see adapted in the Bayelsa case.
And talking about this massive oil spills or massive oil, exploration that have done this much damage on the region, and in the course of our conversation, of course, in Bayelsa State, what does your report say about the level of culpability or otherwise of state and federal government?
The problem in Bayelsa and so much of the Niger Delta is that, you have a pipeline infrastructure that is part and parcel of the landscape. So you have, in Bayelsa, 5,000 kilometers of pipeline. And as I said, the Bayelsa population is 2.3 million, but 500,000 Bayelsans live within walking distance of the pipeline. So you can just imagine how the potential damage caused on people's lives and their farms, land and waterways by having pipeline infrastructure so close to them. So we are targeting the oil companies because we believe as the operators, as the principal operators, they have first liability. But of course, many of the operations are joint ventures where the Nigerian government is also an important shareholder. We also note that the state government has jurisdiction, as well as the federal government, over environmental matters. So we believe all three parties, the companies, the countries where those companies are domiciled, the Nigerian federal government and the state government, all have their role to play in the cleanup, the ambitious cleanup effort that is required for Bayelsa. The state government, for example, based on the Land Use Act, has some powers in terms of determining rights of way and affording to oil companies the rights of way over their territory. We believe, and we're stating it very clearly in the report, that the Bayelsa state government could be much more robust in the exercise of its powers to bring oil companies to the table. And actually, we're calling on the Bayelsa state government to put oil companies on notice that if they don't demonstrate their willingness to take seriously the demands for cleanup and remediation and restoration of the lands and waterways of Bayelsa, then the state government should be talking about revoking their licenses to operate. So whilst, of course, when it comes to matters of oil and gas, it's the federal government that has the most powers, we believe that we need to the Bayelsa state government needs to use the powers at its disposal to bring the companies to the discussion table. So far, we've really done we've done our best to get the companies to consider, to take part in the research and evidence gathering that we've done. We've written to them, we've invited them to evidence sessions, we've asked them for information about their cleanup practices, we've given them the opportunity to respond to some of the claims that we're making in the report, but we've had very limited response, and we're hoping that we will be able to move towards a conversation that takes us beyond a kind of defensive posture where we discuss and debate the whys and wherefores of who is responsible and whether it's sabotage. We need to move well beyond that.
And Doctor, tell us some more. Apologies for interrupting your line of thought, but talking about that line you just used, defensive, the defensive position on the part of the IOCs in your engagement with them during the preparation of this report, because for long they've always been talking about vandalism as one of the key reasons behind the devastation in the oil in the region. So are you talking about that defense on their part, the issue of vandalism, and what's your response?
Yes, in fact, I'm talking about that, but also their initial response when we published the report last year. But let me first talk about the vandalism claim. So traditionally, and actually in writing, both AGIP, Eni, and Shell, in our engagement with them, have suggested that the vast majority of pollution problems are attributable to vandalism of pipelines. We heard yesterday, a colleague, we had an international conference, and even the Nigerian regulatory body, NOSDRA, which is responsible for oil spill detection, also claimed that a vast number of the problems of pollution are related to cut pipelines. We challenge and have repeatedly challenged this claim. We're not blind or naive to the fact that there may be incidents of so-called vandalism, but we believe that that is a distraction. The fact that you've got some 40% of your pipeline infrastructure that is old, dilapidated, and not reconditioned. The fact that even in cases where you have disused wellheads and pipeline infrastructure, that is still spewing oil and gas. So, non-active infrastructure that has been left, not seriously decommissioned, and that is still leaking oil, suggests to us that that claim of sabotage needs to be really questioned. We also note in the report that even the process for determining cause of spill is highly flawed. Why? Because NOSDRA, the government agency, as well as the companies and community representatives, are supposed to go and assess the damage and then sign a document, which is the Joint Investigation Visit document, saying the cause of spill. However, in order to get to those sites where the spill is deemed to have occurred, NOSDRA is reliant on oil company infrastructure, transport. We believe that that means that there is an inbuilt bias that prevents Nigeria's regulatory authorities from exercising independent assessment of the nature of spill. And also, often those, even if there are community people involved, there is a political economy factor that often means that signatures on JIVs, Joint Investigation Visit reports, are highly suspect. So we would like to see an overhaul, and a number of other organisations have been calling for this for decades. I think of SDN, for example, an NGO very active in the Niger Delta, calling for independence in the Joint Investigation Visit infrastructure. So that's that's what I mean when I say defensive posture on the one hand. But even after we published our report last year, and we published the report, we launched it in London, there was lots of very interesting engagement at the House of Lords. And when I was brought before the media to discuss the report, I found myself having to respond to retorts by Shell, notably, claiming that the substance of our report was suspect, and once again claiming that they had no case to answer, they had done the necessary in terms of remediation and clean-up, and that sabotage was again to blame. So we're in a cat and mouse situation of denial versus a body of evidence that has taken 4 to 5 years to collect, that we're confident can challenge those claims.
All right. Dr. Catherine, I'm afraid we've run out of time. Pretty engaging speaking with you. We thank you very much for your time with us. Dr. Catherine Wajakudaho, the Chair, Expert Working Group, Bayelsa State Oil and Environmental Commission, and the Director, Politics and Governance, ODI. Many thanks once again for your time.
Thank you very much.